Hey everyone, what's up? This is Simon back with a new video, and today we will focus on using Facebook login within your Ionic application with Capacitor. So in the past we had the Google sign-in and we also had Apple sign-in, and today we will do it with Facebook. Now, to get started, simply create a new application or use your existing Ionic Capacitor application. If you're starting a new application, I also recommend you directly pass the package ID that you want to use. So that's the ID usually called the bundle ID with iOS or the Google Play package ID, something like this, for your application. You can also do it later in your existing application as well. And the most important part is installing the Capacitor Community Facebook Login plugin, which will be used for both the web login, so we can do this within our web application as well, and also for the native platforms. Once you've done this, I recommend you run one Ionic build so you can add the native platforms for iOS and Android, and then we can dive into the code. Quick addition, if you're using an existing application, simply make sure that inside your Capacitor config, you got the right app ID. If you've already generated your native platforms and used the standard Ionic, whatever ID, I would actually remove the native platforms as well. For iOS, it's not too complicated. For Android, I had some problems in the past updating this, and we really need this string later inside our application. As a quick addition for the setup, we also need the HTTP client within our app module, so import it and add it to the array of imports, because after we've logged in with Facebook, we will, for testing, make a little request to the Graph API, so that's where we're going to use our HTTP client. But once we're at this point, we can actually leave our application and move into developersfacebook.com. I've already created an application in here. You can simply go ahead, click Create App, and select Build Connected Experiences. I'm actually not sure if there's a difference between these. I just used the third one since it looked like that would be the right thing, and then give it a name, and that's basically all. Now, what we need to do is within Facebook or within our Facebook application, we need to add the native platforms for iOS and Android. That's basically the same like we did in the past, or you might have done for Firebase, where you also add your apps. It always sounds kind of strange, but it's actually quite easy. Somehow I can also change my language to local US or something like this, so you don't get my German. Yeah, now we got settings, basic, and there we go. Now I'm back to German, whatever. I'm sure you will find that menu. So what we need to do here is add platforms. We need to add the iOS and the Android platform. I already selected them. They will basically just bring up a card like this for iOS and for Android. Now, for iOS, the only thing you need to fill in is your bundle ID, which is the one we used with the CLI or which is within your Capacitor config right here. So put that bundle ID into that and then you're fine. For Android, same thing. First of all, add your bundle ID, which is now the Google Play package name, and then we got a field key hashes. That's a bit more complicated. So when you build your application, it will be automatically signed. So if you run the standard Capacitor development build, it will use your Android debug key, which is usually located at .android debug key store. So that's my key store file. And the standard password for that should be Android. It might be different in your situation if you used another development key or created your own key store file with your password. But the thing we need to run now is this. Let me quickly add the password. There we go. So keytool, export certificate. The alias is usually Android debug key. Again, it might be different. If you have problems opening your default key, just generate a new key store file and use it for signing. That should be fine as well. The path to the key store file and then running OpenSSL, whatever, base 64. So we get a hash This might be different for Windows. That's actually the Mac command. Within the tutorial link below this video, I will also post the code for Windows or how to find the according command. And then you should get this little string, and I guess, yeah, that's already added to my key hashes. And simply copy yours, put it into this. Just a quick reminder, once you build a production build and release it to the Android Play Store, you might have a different key store file with a different key hash, so that should also go into this field. So you can have multiple key hashes in here as far as I know. That's everything for now. The only thing that we will need in the future from our app ID is the app ID from our Facebook application. So I will move this to the side and we can continue, because for our, where's my terminal? For our application, we now need a few changes for the native platforms to make the Capacitor plugin work. First one is within our app Delegate Swift. You can use this with Xcode or you can use it right within your IDE. It doesn't really matter. First of all, we add 2 imports for Facebook Core and another Facebook Kit. And then you need to change 2 functionalities. The first one is did finish launching with options. Within here, we need to call the Facebook Kit. Once again, if you're lazy typing this, just check out the code below the video. All the other functionalities stay like they are. And then we get to this one where it can handle URL. And in here, we add a little another snippet to call our Facebook Kit to open the Facebook application. So our native or our iOS application can open the native Facebook dialog. You can log in and then you will be brought back to our own application. Everything else stays the same as far as I know. And then you can close it and move into another file that's called info plist. It's actually right next to the app Delegate. Again, you can open it in Xcode, you can open it with your own IDE. And what you need to do is you need to first of all override the CF bundle URL types, which contains a default entry by Capacitor as far as I know. And in here you see a little ID, and guess what? That's our Facebook app ID. That's actually not really the Facebook app ID. Let me quickly check this. What's this ID? That's actually, okay, sorry about that. The Facebook app ID from our app follows in here, so you can compare this 687 to my app ID 687. That's also part of the snippet that you need to add, but this is the bundle URL scheme for the Facebook application. So this is a fixed key that just is there. And also this whole block basically goes into your info plist. So override the bundle URL types and then add all the other stuff until you get to CF bundle version that already exists in there. Okay, that's actually the setup for iOS. Pretty easy so far. For Android, it's a tiny bit more complicated, I'd say. So first of all, we open the main activity, which is usually inside Android app source, main, Java, your package, and then main activity. And within the init, we add our plugin. That's a standard procedure, as always, for Capacitor plugins on Android. Now we need to take 2 more steps for this plugin to make it work. The first is opening the Android manifest XML, which is in source, main, resources, Android manifest XML. And it's a bit tricky to find the right keys. So under manifest application, that's where we can put in our snippet. I'm actually not sure where I pasted it. So there's an activity block, there's a provider block, and here is what I pasted into. So this whole thing from metadata about the Facebook application ID, the activity, and this one goes into our Android manifest XML. From what I know, in here there's actually nothing to change. That's just for the communication between your application and the native Facebook application. But Of course, we need a place where we add our Facebook ID, and that's within the strings file, which is in app source main resources values strings. There you should already find a few other strings about your app name and your custom URL scheme. And now the two elements are new, and once again, compare them to my app ID. That's exactly the Facebook app ID that goes into here. Actually not sure why the protocol scheme is also this, but it worked for me. So yeah, kind of strange. If you encounter problems, perhaps check this out once again. I will also look it up, but as far as I know, these should be the same values. Now, we've configured this for iOS and for Android, and we can also use this on the web. For the web, we can actually use the standard implementation of the Facebook plugin, and therefore we can open our index.html of our Ionic application, and after the body tag, we add this little script block to init the Facebook SDK. This will load the SDK, that's a standard block. And then we got the init command, in which we also need our Facebook ID. So let me quickly bring in my very own, and then we're fine to use this on the web as well. So we've implemented all the stuff, but we actually haven't implemented the real Facebook login. There's now a little problem because the web implementation of this plugin is different than the native implementation. So usually we would just use the plugins object from Capacitor core and then structure it to use the Facebook login. But that doesn't quite work correctly. So instead we will import the Facebook login plugin, which is actually the interface for our plugin, and have a little variable in here. That will help us to create a function. Let's call this async setup Facebook login. So all of this is really just required if you want to run it on the web. If you don't care about the web and just need the native iOS and Android application, actually you could do this a bit easier, but I just felt like we should cover it. So within this constructor, let's call setup Facebook login. And what we're going to do in here is use the isPlatform from, can we use this from Ionic Angler? Yeah, that should be fine. And we will set the Facebook login to Facebook login. Where do we import this from? Well, of course, from the package Facebook login. That was just the interface. We could actually do this in one line. So let's remove this. So for desktop, for the web version, it will use the web implementation. For native, we will now destructure the plugins object and use the Facebook login instead. And then you should just make sure that you only call all the Facebook stuff through this and not like described. Usually you would use Facebook login dot whatever, but that's not going to work in our case. But we still have the typing because we added the interface here to our variable. To make it work finally on the web, we also need to call register web plugin, which you can also import from Capacitor core and pass in our Facebook login. It's really a bit, well, complicated, I'd say, to make this work on the web as well and confusing. But this procedure now worked for me for both the web version and the desktop, the mobile native application. So now we can finally move into the login. I will bring in the code. Once again, you can find it in the tutorial. This part isn't actually too hard anymore because now we can just use our Facebook login, which comes with just a few functions. So get current access token, login, and log out. And of course, first one is calling logout. Pass in the permissions that you want from the users. I just used email and birthday just as a quick example. And now we encounter another problem because the result, let's log this out. The result on the web only contains an access token. If we want to make a call to the Graph API, we usually also need our user ID. On iOS and Android, it's actually already in that response. I'm not sure why it's not in the web version. Perhaps the plugin will change in the future. So if the result contains an access token and the access token also has the user ID, we can store the token and call a function to load the user data. And if the result contains an access token but no user ID, we need to take one more step, which is calling or getting the current token. Once again, just using the standard function from our Facebook login plugin, and then setting this as our token, because this result actually contains the user ID. It's kind of strange, really. Finally, we got this one function to load the user data, which will now use our token. Also, logout, pretty standard, just using the function. So to make this a bit more visible, I'll just do it in 2 lines. Construct a URL to the Facebook Graph API. In fact, I really recommend, if you want to retrieve any data, check out the Graph API Explorer, which makes it really easy to add fields and test different settings on the Facebook Graph API. Really a huge recommendation, pretty cool tool. So I make a request to the current user ID, the fields, ID, name, picture. Actually interesting syntax here, but it just works. Birthday, email, and then adding the access token, which we have stored as well. And then you can make a simple GET request, no other header required. We need to inject this private HTTP client. Yeah, that should work fine. And I will now already bring up some kind of live reload, perhaps for iOS in the background, because we're close to the end of the code already. So we got the login, which will log in the user. We will store the token or retrieve more information if we're on the web. This will give us more information. This will load some other information from the API. I will also put a login here, user, so we really see what's going on. And oh well, we might need a little HTML representation. Well, that's kind of easy, because we just need a little button for the login and a little card if we have a user object to display, like the name, the birthday, the email, and perhaps a logout, and also the picture of the user. So now perhaps we got a web preview somewhere. Where's my web preview? Actually, you usually log out where you're running. You're running on localhost, is that right? Maybe, maybe not. We will find out. So let's give it a try. Let's hit the login. We see a few errors in the background, but as long as all my data comes in, I'm actually quite fine. Can no longer be called from HTTP pages. Yeah. I guess in production, this will result in a real error. For testing, it kind of works. That's actually quite nice by the Facebook SDK. Of course, localhost has no HTTPS, but if you plan to host your Ionic application somewhere, always use SSL certificates. So then this error would be gone since you're using HTTPS. Now, as we can see from the login response, we actually see the user ID, but that's inside the plugin itself. I don't know why it's not returning all of this data. Perhaps it will in a future version, but right now the result, let's show you the problem. So where's my login function? Here's the login, and here we log out the result. And the result that we get only has this big token and no other information, so no user ID. Only if we make the call to get the current token, we get back, let's quickly also log this, current token result. Only in that case on the web we get the real information, which is really, I don't know why. In the background, let me quickly already deploy this to my not connected device. Well, you aren't connected, my friend. Well, I will connect this in the background. There we go, Simon, done, great, run on Simon. That should be fine. Now let's do the login again, because I logged in before, it's quite fast, otherwise it will just open the Facebook dialog. And now we see the user, the current token, there we go. That was what I wanted to show. Now this not only contains the token, but also the user ID. The rest is still pretty empty. And for the call to the Graph API, We also get all the relevant data that we wanted to include. We have a bigger picture, we got my name, email, birthday, so everything included, that's fine. Let's quickly also take a look at this on a device now. All right, here's the app. Let's try it. The login wants to use Facebook, that's fine. Facebook opens, which actually brings up the open dialog right within the native application. I haven't added my app for review. Please, I guess I was too slow. Let's go back. So you previously logged into the Delegate app. Would you like to continue? Of course, I would like. Which brings us directly back into our native application, and we got the smooth process for Facebook login. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I have other videos on the Google sign-in, on Apple sign-in. Now we also got Facebook sign-in. And if you want to see more social providers, or perhaps something like the JSON Web Token login again with a bit more complicated flow, or anything around authentication, let me know below, because I lately released a few of these bigger templates and I think these can be really helpful. So let me know what you would like to see and enjoy your day. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and stay subscribed so you get notified about all the new tutorials, quick wins, and other app development and web development videos on this channel. If you want to learn more about Ionic with in-depth courses, a community of like-minded developers so you can learn and build your apps faster, you should definitely check out the Ionic Academy, which is my code school to help you with everything Ionic, with a huge library of courses, material, and a supportive Slack channel so we can get your app out. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you inside the next video. Have a great day and happy coding, Simon.